STEM City USA Healthy Doses series is your passport to a balanced lifestyle. Hosted by Dr. Tiffany Anderson and presented in the Boston Scientific Auditorium. And now, Dr. Tiffany Anderson.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Rayondon Kennedy, and this is another episode of Healthy Doses. We are streaming live in the metaverse at STEM City USA, and this show is brought to you by our partners, Boston Scientific. As you may know by now, Healthy Doses is a show that we put together to give you the tips, tools, resources, conversations, everything that you need to be the best version of yourself. And today is going to be a really cool topic because we're going to be talking about love languages. And to guide us through that conversation is Dr. Tiffany Anderson. Good morning, Dr. Anderson.
Hey, Ray, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Should I be calling you the love doctor today?
I'll take it.
Okay, we take it.
Just for today. And my background is marriage and family therapy, so I am licensed marriage and family therapist.
So you are exactly the person that we need to kind of guide us through this conversation.
Yes, I'll take it.
So Dr. Anderson, tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today with love languages.
Yes, so today, which I think this is also a unique topic. I think all our topics are unique. But this is a twist a bit, right? Talking about love languages and kind of what that looks like for each individual, how it shows up in our lives, how it developed over time, and how it's still kind of operating in our relationships, right? So first, I want to start with just a few questions for the audience. I want you to just kind of consider these questions. Think of them from a stance of your own love language, right? So first, I want you to think about what is more meaningful to you. Would you rather receive a loving note or text for no special reason? Or would you prefer your partner to give you a hug or like physical touch? Next, would you prefer to spend time with your partner, just the two of you? Or do you want something more practical that they can kind of help you out with? Would you prefer your partner to give you a gift as a token of their love? Or would you rather spend uninterrupted time with your partner? Next, consider what's more meaningful to you. Your partner unexpectedly doing something that's like filling up your car, doing laundry, or do you simply just want physical touch, right? For them to hold your hand, give you a kiss or something like that. Lastly, I want you to consider from your stance of love, if you prefer your partner to put their arm around you when you're in public or surprise you with a gift, right? So consider those, think about it, because that all informs who you are and the way you receive love. And so we'll continue this conversation after our sponsors, Boston Scientific.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get into this really cool, important conversation But before we do that, I do want to let you know that if you're watching and you have comments, questions, if you want to share a story with us, you can scan that QR code right there in the top right hand corner uh, and let us know any comments that you have. Also, in the description, there's a link. If you use that link, you can go ahead and send us a message and really let us know what you think on the topic. So we would love to hear from you. We are also in the chat. If you're watching in the STEM City auditorium, uh, go ahead and communicate any questions or comments you have for us. Dr. Anderson, we're talking about love languages, which I think has been really helpful, I guess, in my relationship with my wife. You know, I remember she came with like this book, was like, you got to read this. I was like, what is this? But once getting into it, I found, you know, the conversation and at least the information to be very helpful. And I hope that, you know, this conversation can really help, you know, the people who are watching. And so when we talk about love languages, Dr. Anderson, what exactly are we talking about? What is love languages?
Yeah. So the concept or the theory of love language is this idea that it's how a person prefers to express their love and how they prefer to receive their love from a partner, right? So the term is often used to refer to like different methods of expressing one's love. And it really begs the question like how we receive it, because we have to really kind of know how, right? So that will come up a bit, and we'll talk about that. So this concept is theory, and when I say theory, I just mean someone came up with this. Someone, um, let's say, give that person a name, Dr. Gary Chapman, in his book called "The Five Love Languages: The Secret to Love That Lasts." Maybe you read that, Ray. Maybe that was the book your wife had for you. It really describes these kind of five unique styles of communicating love, right? And his idea was from his experience as a marriage counselor, right? He was able to decide, okay, this is what I've seen the most. These are the five categories. And this is the way couples tend to express their love. But I say it's a theory because it's someone's idea that they have put a lot of research behind. However, it's not the same for everyone, and it's okay if you have multiple ways of showing love or receiving love outside of the five love languages.
So this Dr. Chapman came up with this idea, um, wrote this book, and you know created this theory. Why is it important? Why are we talking about love languages now? How does that impact our lives?
Yeah, I think what we're finding um, with love languages is that there are oftentimes maybe some discrepancy between two individuals in the way that they show love, because and this is what I tell a lot of my couples is that we have two individuals coming together from various lenses, different lived experiences, different traumas, different overall worldviews, right? So we can't expect our partner to be like us, think like us, love like us, show up in the world like us, right? And so a lot of the um, discrepancies is how we receive love, how we want to be loved. And in a partnership, that's very important, right? So it becomes so significant in a relationship when we find that our partner may prefer a certain way to be loved, but we prefer a different way, right? So we give love the way we prefer. Yeah. That doesn't mean that our partner receives it the same way. So it's important because it really allows us to discern how they show their love so we can feel also appreciated, right? So knowing your partner's love language will help all of us kind of discern um, how they would like to feel loved. And in the reverse, it allows them to learn how we would like to feel loved, right? So oftentimes it's not that our partner doesn't love us, it's that they love us only in the ways that they know how to love us, right? So it's limited. And so our job is to communicate how we like to be loved. And this book allows us to give language to it if folks are having difficulties with describing it. And so we'll get more into that. But that's really the importance, just to actually show up for ourselves, and give ourselves the voice to vocalize our needs and our wants, and also to show appreciation to our partner in the ways that they truly will receive it.
And so, Dr. Anderson, would you say it's I'm trying to figure out how I want to answer, how I want to word this question. Would
Yeah.
you say it's more beneficial for you to know your love language or for your partner to know your love languages?
That's a great question. I would say it's more beneficial for us to know. And I say that because um, if our partner, how would our partner know if we don't know, right?
Mhm.
That's another point. But if our partner assumes, they still may not be showing up in the way that we need them to. So it's more beneficial for us to know our love language. And I say this because the work that I do, I know how important it is to show ourselves love and to show ourselves um, appreciation, and not solely rely on our partners to do that, right? And
Mhm.
so it is very important if I know that I desire love um, through words of affirmation, just for example, instead of waiting for my partner to do it, I can always show it myself, right? I can always speak to myself and extend grace to myself and pour back into myself and journal and all those things. And so it's not just enough to rely on our partners to give it to us, but we need to give it to ourselves first.
Yeah. So, Dr. Anderson, I want to get into, talking about how we can communicate those, because sometimes those conversations can be easy, sometimes they can be hard. But why don't we talk about what the actual love languages are, so folks who are not familiar kind of have an understanding of what we're talking about. And then I want to take that conversation into how do we communicate those, how do we communicate our language? How do we communicate our love language and kind of share that with our loved ones.
Okay. So first, let's get into the 5 love languages. Again, this is a theory. With a theory, you find a lot more folks are saying it's not 5, it's now 7. It's not right. And so, based on the book, based on just the information we're sharing today with Dr. Chapman, we're going to stick with the originator, right? And so, the number one, it's not definitely it's not categorized, but I'll just start with this one, words of affirmation. So people with words of affirmation as love language, they value verbal acknowledgement of affection. The I love you, you're doing a good job. I value you. I see you. Um, I commend you, right? Positive affirmations. They want to hear this, right? So frequent texting, digital communication, some social media engagement. Think about the person that prefers you to write along birthday um, post about them, right? Telling the world how much you love them and appreciate them. Things like that. Words of affirmation. They want to hear it. They need to hear it. That is the way that they feel the most loved and the most acknowledged. So, words of affirmation. So, as I'm going through, just think of ways that you like to be loved or that you feel the most kind of seen. All right, next we have quality time. So these individuals feel the most adored when their partner is actively spending time with them, and they're always down to like hang out, try new things. The overall objective is that they are together, right? They love when the partner is actively listening, giving them eye contact, when they are fully present, right, and prioritizing their relationship. This love language is all about giving undivided attention to the special person without distractions, right? So this person is the partner is not on their phone, watching television, doing other things, right? They are present in the moment with this person. Um, this person would desire like a strong time, this person being like actively spending time with them in meaningful ways and having conversations and sharing events together, right? So going out, hiking, walking, um, picnics, right? Just enjoying the present moment together. So that's someone that would enjoy quality time. Next, we have acts of service. This love language is all about this individual valuing their partner that goes out of their way to make their life easier. It's things like bringing soup or food to the bed when they're sick, when they're working long hours, them kind of bringing them a snack or coffee, right? These are intentional acts of service, picking up the dry cleaning, if they're running, running late or something like that, right? So taking cues of when their partner is in need of something and showing up in that way. This love language is for the person that believes actions speak louder than words. Um, Unlike those who prefer to hear much about how, words of affirmation, right? That's kind of like the opposite. Some prefer to hear it. With acts of service, this person prefers to see it, right? And kind of feel it in the moment. So, doing smaller or larger chores to make their lives easier and more comfortable, they highly, highly cherish. So that is acts of service. Okay. Next, we have gifts. So it's pretty straightforward, but this person just feels love when people give them kind of visual symbols of love. So I don't want you to think like the person that prefers gifts is like greedy or overindulgent or anything like that. It just means that when someone physically shows them a symbol of their love, that's when they feel loved, right? So it's not about monetary value of the gift in any way. It's just the thought behind the item. Does that make sense? And so when someone may just give money, they may want you to go out and give a card that symbolizes their love, right? That it is very much symbolic of the love that you two share together. All right. People with this style recognize the value of gift giving, like the process. So someone like carefully reflecting on what they like and what they prefer, choosing an object that represents a relationship and the emotional benefit of receiving the present. Yeah. So it needs to be kind of physical, but also meaningful. And with the meaningful, it matters to them that that person reflects on their values of the relationship and that they can kind of find a gift that represents that. And then lastly, we have physical touch. So individuals with physical touch as their love language, they receive physical touch in the signs of like affection, right? So kissing, holding hands, cuddling, or physical intimacy. It for this individual, it can be incredibly affirming that serves as a power of like emotional connecting. So it can go this all love languages, and we'll talk about that. But for this one in particular, it can go back to childhood and how this person may either receive like deep affection from their parents when they were held or kissed or hugged. And so because of that, they equate, in relationships a physical touch. People who communicate their appreciation through this language, when they obviously consent to it, they feel appreciated when they were hugged or kissed or cuddled. And they value feeling the warmth and the comfort that comes with physical touch in relationships. So those are the five. Right. We're live.
We are live,
We're
and I
live.
was rustling a lot of papers. I didn't want you to hear all that, so I muted.
Taking all the notes. Ray was taking all the notes to bring back. Like,
Oh yeah, I'm coming with a battalion.
yeah.
When we talk about love languages, when you take the test and you figure out what your love languages are, that's information on how you want to be loved. For example, my highest when I took the test, my highest results were words of affirmation, um, and acts of service, right? I
Mm,
love, people giving me acts of service. I love words of affirmation. I love positive feedback. When I think about, not even romantic relationships, but like as an athlete, I love to hear like, yo, I'm doing this right. I love to hear this is going. And that was my motivation, right?
yeah.
And so uh, that's how I like to receive. But what about how I show love? Is that different than the results that we have? Because I also like, you know, acts of service. I like doing things to help others. I love giving gifts. Is that a result or is that a different test?
Mm. So you're saying, just so I'm clear, right? You're
Hmm.
asking um, what the test, it tells you how you would like to receive love. And you're
Correct.
saying, is it different or can it be different for how you show
Yes.
love? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be different. That's more of a, we don't, that's not, from what I know, a different test. Honestly, it's all the same test. And I think what you're asking really kind of goes against um, some of the initial research that says the way someone receives love is the way they show love. And
Hmm.
what Ray is saying that it's different. And so
No,
that,
I'm asking if it's different. I
oh,
think you're answering my question by saying that the way you want to be loved is the way you show love.
yes, yes,
Right.
that's a great question. And we'll get more into why it can be different, or
Hmm.
the flexibility of these things, because simply it is a theory. But yes, it can look differently. And the I think the initial understanding is that the way I receive love is the way that I give love, right? And that's why oftentimes our partners may not um, uh, may not be receiving the love that they want because we're using our own love language.
Hmm.
So oftentimes for a lot of folks, the way we receive it is the way we give it, because that's our frame of reference. Can it look differently? Absolutely. But a lot of times we go with, we go with what we know, or we may not be using, because the love language is like a hierarchy, right? So it can tell you your dominant one, but that doesn't mean you don't show love in other ways, or that you don't have a love language that's very close to the first one. Some people tie and have two. So it can change, but oftentimes our framework is what we use to show love. Is that clear?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and let's talk about that show. I talked about I wanted I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about how. So, right, we
Mhm,
go through, we take this test, right,
mhm,
and we figure out our results, how we want to be loved, how we show love.
mhm.
Now, how what are some tips? What are some good ways? How do we communicate that with our loved ones?
How do we communicate how we show love? What
Yes.
love
Like
language?
how do we communicate? So I know right now my love language is acts of service,
Mhm.
words of affirmation, right? Now how do you have that conversation with your loved one? How do you let them know this
Like,
is what I want to be. This is how I want to be loved. I want to hear
got you,
yeah.
got you. This is how I want to be loved. Okay, that's what I was missing. Thank you. Very clear. So yes, so you're saying, okay, now I know how I want to be loved. How do I communicate with my loved ones or my
Yes.
partner about that? Um, the ways in which I want to be loved. First, the big thing is knowing how you want to be loved. So you can take that test, or you can just innately know that I like to be loved in this way. I feel most appreciated and seen in this way. And so I don't want this to feel so complicated when it comes to relationships and families, right? So first, a lot of that is feeling comfortable being vulnerable with your partner and or family members, that says, um, this is the way that I like to be poured into. And you can use that. I mean, you can say like, hey, I took a test and I recognize that this is the way I like to be like valued or loved or seen. Um, Also, you can ask them theirs, right, to bring in the conversation of like, okay, we're sharing. So they can share theirs and you can say, okay, from what I know about myself, I love acts of service, right? I love when folks show up to make my life easier. Like that's really how I feel loved, and kind of be able to explain like what it does for you. Um, and another way is simply you can write it down. You can, I think the thing with anything is about like assertiveness and feeling comfortable enough to assert yourself and your needs surrounding what you want um, from that relationship. Make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And so when we come back, I want to talk about, I guess, the people involved when we talk about love languages. And so I want to continue this conversation right after we get back from this special message from Boston Scientific. Stay with us, y'all.
We know how to treat the colds and the coughs. We know how to treat the bumps and the bruises, the cuts and fractures. But how do we treat, I can't afford a day off work to see a doctor? How do we treat, I've never had a doctor who speaks my language? How do we treat, I don't know how to connect with some of my patients? How do we treat, you're not listening? We can't treat what we cannot see. So we have to look closer and see what we're missing. People, patients, misdiagnosed, misunderstood, overlooked. These are the people left out of a system charged with helping them. And it's up to us to find them in our communities, in our relationships, in our data. We're meeting them where they are, discovering who they are. We're taking an honest look to understand their healthcare needs and delivering effective ways to reach them. We don't have all the answers, but together we can find the way to address the gaps in our healthcare system, to provide something better, to find more chances to save more lives. It won't be easy, but we can help make it right, because no one should be missed.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are discussing love languages, and this is a really great conversation so far. We hope you're enjoying it. If you're just joining us, I do want to remind you that if you want to jump in on the conversation or give us a couple of notes, give us a couple of comments or share a story, go ahead, drop a line in the comments, or look in the show description. Wherever you're watching, you should see a link for the questions if you want to drop us a line, and you can do that anonymously. And if you're inside the metaverse, there's a chat room where you could chat with different people who are there watching as well. And so I really want to get back into this conversation, and I really do want to hear from you. So throw us a line, and when we get to Q&A, hopefully we can address some of those questions that you might have at the end. And so, Dr. Anderson, I want to take the conversation, and we always talk about the who, what, when, but when you're talking about love languages, and we talked about who, a large part of our conversation has been around romantic partners, right? But you love people who are outside of that. So does love languages translate over to those relationships? And then I guess even more advanced than that, does it change based on the relationship, right? So like, I might have a certain way I want to be loved by my romantic partner. That might not be the same way I want my homeboys or my friends to to love me, or even like, family members or kids. So like, does that change depending on the relationship, on how you wish to be loved?
Another great question. Yes, yes. It does change. It does. But I do want to say, if your love language is words of affirmation, it can still, it's going to change a bit in a romantic relationship, but the way it looks in your parental relationship may still stay the same, right? You still may love your mom saying, "Good job, Ray." I see you, Ray, you're working really hard, right? It still may kind of, the overall kind of love language may stay the same. But if it's, let's say, physical touch, like you said, your best friend, that may not work in that type of relationship. So it can change, and it may shift to your second one, right? It may, shift to one that, again, you just feel is more appropriate in that particular relationship. So yes, it can change. I think there may be some grace, I think, given to relationships outside of our romantic partners. If where you recognize that, okay, my friends, are kind of forced to show up for me a little bit differently than my partner, right? So I don't put as much emphasis on my primary love language in my friendships, but with my partner, I do, right? And so it's a constant kind of shifting back and forth depending on your primary love language. But I do want to say that you can receive the same in various ways, appropriate ways, but some can get a little different, if you will, depending on what that love language is. But that is a great, great, great question. And a lot of our relationships, we are simply figuring out how to love each other, right? So I want to emphasize that, because we have to be careful with our expectations of coming in relationships and thinking that that person knows. A lot of times they'll never know until you communicate that, until there's some bumps, some hiccups, some disagreements, right? Well, we have a conversation and we spell out what happened, what was the interruption, what was the breakdown, and we can talk about, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel heard when this happened, because the way I receive love is through positive words, and your words were not positive, right? And so that is where the breakdown happened for me. And the other person can share that once the disagreement happened, you walked away. I like a hug after. I like to make sure that we are still in a safe place. And so physical touch is how I receive love. Does it make sense? So that's a lot of times what's happening in any relationships in our lives, where there's a breakdown that we're not communicating that does involve our love languages. So I do encourage those that know it or want to get to know it to bring it up in relationships, because folks cannot read your mind. They do not know what you prefer if you do not speak your truth.
I was just about to say, what? I can't expect people to just know what's wrong or know how to get to me. I have to talk this out.
Yes.
What? That's insane. No, I'm just playing.
Like they say, at your big age, can you believe that you have to communicate? Yes, you do.
If they love me, they will know.
No.
No, I'm just playing. No.
Toxic. No, I was kidding. No, they will not know. Yeah, you do have to communicate. And sometimes disagreements, although, some folks avoid conflict and things like that, and I understand, but sometimes conflict is helpful, man. It really is helpful, because it informs us of what went wrong and how we can do it differently next time if we communicate what happened the first time, so we can avoid it in the future.
Yep. No, and that's very important. All jokes aside, people can't read your mind, and if you don't say it, then you can't expect it to be known. And I think that's important for every relationship. There's romantic, friendship, work. Like, you have to communicate, otherwise, you can't expect it to be known.
Absolutely.
Dr. Anderson, when we're talking about these love languages, right? I just took the test today, and it happens to be the same, results that I got, when I took it a couple, probably a few years now, with my wife when she asked me to take it. It happens to be the same.
Mhm.
But does your love languages change over time? Maybe, as you go through more life experiences or, get older. can they change, or is this kind of like a innate personality trait that kind of sits with you, um, across your lifespan?
Yeah. No, love language. Yeah, love languages can change. Um, we should kind of expect them to change eventually. Maybe not, but it's important to know that they can absolutely change over time and with the relationship, right? Um, and so, like many things in life, love languages are fluid, they're not fixed, right?
Mhm.
And so, as one's relationship grows and evolves, one's love language will as well. Um, if it's working the way it works, that's fine too. But the expectation is that it will change potentially at some point as the relationship changes. At different stages, our demands on our time changes, goals change, and so forth, right? So, what life looked like before children, what love language looked like before children, just as an example, may change once the household changes, like they said, goals changes. Once you have large transitions, it may change. So, for example, if my thing was words of affirmation initially, and then um, we expand our family and have children, it may be acts of service because I need the help. So doing laundry, washing, dishes or something like that may be my love language because that's just where I am. So that's just an example. So yes, it can change as the relationship changes and evolves.
Now, before I get into some of these questions that are coming in, as you can imagine, this is a hot topic. um, when so you talked about it changing. Is there a certain point when our love languages develop? I mean, I know you talked earlier about physical touch maybe being kind of onset by parents always hugging, or I forget how you worded that, but as babies, depending on the type of love that you receive, kind of help develop. Is that when you start to develop your love language, at least the start of it?
Yeah, again, it's a theory. So the
Sure.
idea is that our love language are impacted by our childhood and kind of how we grew up, right? So there's some theories out there that our love languages are the very things that we didn't get growing up, and that's why we have them, and that's why it's such a demand on them now. Another theory is that what you had throughout your life is what you now prefer, right? Um, Personal example, I would say my parents' love language. My dad, I would say he's more words of affirmation, and that's how he showed me love. Also, hugs and physical touch. And then my mom was more gifts, and that's how she showed love by being very intentional with gifts, and she's really good at that. And so one can argue. I mean, my love language is neither of those, right? So um, one could argue again, it's a theory. So everyone's different. One could argue that it comes from childhood, but I do think ultimately, and there's some research. I mean, it is impacted. Hear me out. That our childhood, in the way that um, we're raised, and through those love styles, do impact our love languages. A person's love style is defined as a specific pattern of behavior related to how they receive and express love. And it is largely modeled after a relationship with our parents. So, how we take or what we take away from that is a part of our love language, right? We're just not defining it as it looks like this because this is what we received, or it looks like this because it's not received. Everyone takes something different away from their experience, but it is impacted by our childhood experiences and the way kind of love was given to us. Is that clear, Ray?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So the argument for me could be, oh, well, I got those things growing up, so I want what's the other side of those things, right? Um, but it changes. I will take every love language out there. You understand? I do not discriminate. There's definitely preferences but I see the value in all of them and how they work, like you said, Ray, and like other relationships. And so some relationships that are new, the demand may be less. It may be, this is new, they don't know. And I feel love just connecting with this person. I'm not putting like the expectations or demands on this relationship. But again, with a partnership, it looks different because you are with this partner and you want it to be and as equal of an exchange of love as possible, right? So it's just more frequent than it may be in other relationships. But yes, our childhood does influence our love languages, and it's usually developed around that time.
All right, Love Doc. We got some questions coming in. So I'm going to see. There's a couple of them that are basically kind of centered around the same thing. That is, what if your partner doesn't have a compatible love language, right? So I'm guessing, you're not vibing. Maybe you've communicated and like they're still not loving you in that language. Is that what happens from there?
Okay. So first I'll start with what the research is saying. Okay. And then I'll give some areas of what that can look like or how we can start kind of diving into that, right? So what the research is saying in regards to couples that have different love languages, it revealed that couples being aligned with each other's love language wavelength doesn't exactly mean that it's not a successful and happy relationship. Couples who share the same love language weren't happier than the couples who had different styles, right? So which suggests that mastering fluency over all the love language systems and adapting it based on what the partner needs at the moment is more valuable than solely relying on like a dominant love language. I hope that was clear. So basically it's just saying that what I was saying, I'll take all of them. It's saying that it's just more helpful to have an idea of all the love languages and be able to kind of maneuver or switch or navigate depending on what your partner needs at that time, than having a partner that shares the same dominant love language, right? So research isn't showing that a couple with the same love languages and a couple with differencing love language have worse relationships. It's not showing a difference. It's showing that they both can be happy and healthy relationships, and that it's more important to know how to kind of shift and maneuver according to your partner's needs than it is to just know their dominant love language. Is that clear, Ray?
Yes.
That makes sense?
And so I guess if how do we adapt, right? How do we I guess is what, this is different. This is not something I'm used to, but I want to make this work. How do we adapt to our partner's needs?
Yeah, good. That's the question. But I did want to start with that research because I don't want folks freaking out and thinking that, having different love languages means that you have a bad relationship. That is not true. What is most important is that you all are willing to find your middle ground and understand each other's needs. And that's a relationship. It is, and it's important. And I just want to say this real quick. It is important to know, like, the way you receive love is important, but the way your partner receives love is also important, right? And so a lot of things with relationships is we are learning on the spot, and we have to create a space where we feel safe enough to communicate our needs. And that's bigger than love language. I'm just going to say that. That's bigger than love language. So we're talking about love language, but just recognize that love language cannot fix a lack of communication. And that's from Dr. Anderson, MFT, just throwing that out there. Okay, so in regards to just love languages, how can we adapt? What does that look like? Well, first, we need to know that every couple does not speak the same love language, like we said, right? So, although some may have the same love languages as you, and some may not. Just know that the relationship doesn't mean it's a bad relationship in any way, right? It just means that it's different. So how we express and receive love is based on our past, our present, right? Our personalities. So if we kind of talked about this, but if we come from a family that expresses it physically, there's a good chance that your love language may be physical touch with that partner. But we have to know like our partner's backgrounds. We need to know their idea of love, right? And how they want to feel loved. So a lot of it is just an exchange of communication, but recognizing that to adapt is to know, number one, that it's okay for your love languages to be different and for you all to communicate how you were raised, what it looked like in your home versus the other person's home, and how we can kind of meet each other in the middle, right? Next, we want to establish what that love language is. This is what we're talking about. Like Ray said, he took a quiz. You can definitely go online and take that quiz to see exactly what it is, because some folks watching right now may know, many may not, and that is okay. We want, if you're into this and open to trying it with your partner and both of you have a buy-in, which is very important, then take a quiz together, like Ray and his wife did, to understand each other's love language and start to get a clear idea of how each other wants to be received. So that's a big thing. We want to know before we're just kind of jumping in. That sounds good. That sounds good. They all sound good, but what works for you and your partner, right? So we're starting to adapt by simply knowing what the heck it means, how we want to feel loved and receive love, and how we want to give that to our partner. Okay. Next, this thing called compromise. Yeah, relationships are about compromising. With compromising though, I do want you to just be clear that we both want both parties to receive love, right? So it needs to be in a collaboration, if you will. Maybe that's a better word. But we do want to collaborate when it comes to the way that we each receive love, right? And we don't want to make our partner wrong for not showing up the way that we want them to show up. We just want to give room for growth and for new awarenesses, right? So we can't avoid compromise. We want to do this thing called give and take. And if the partner needs more physical love, physical touch, all those things, we want to see what that looks like, number one, and how we can show that. And then we want to communicate ours, right? And what that looks like for us, right? So a big thing is to just be clear. When we talk about words of affirmation, is that good job, or is that someone being very intentional about exactly what they're affirming you about? Yeah. So we want to know first for ourselves so we can express it to others and what that looks like. Next, we want to communicate what we need to feel loved. Again, our partner cannot read our minds, right? So we have to tell them with words and what we need from them. So we need to give them words in regards of our own communication and what that looks like with detail. Okay. Next, we want to know how to speak the same language. We want to know that you don't have to speak the same language to have a good relationship, right? And so if I'm words of affirmation and my partner is physical touch, I don't have to be physical touch to still give that to my partner. Does that make sense? And so it is an intentional act of mine to give my partner their love language, but that does not mean I have to change my own. And that relationship can still be successful All this means is that we have to communicate what we need and what it looks like, right? And then remember that and be intentional with our acts. Something I ask that I've learned over the years is, how can I support you? Is a great question. How can I support you? What do you need, right? Because again, it can change. If our partner has experienced a loss, words of affirmation may be their dominant one, but at that time, that's not what they need. They may need a hug, right? And so we're asking, how can I support you? Yeah. We're showing up for them. We're being intentional and we're being present. So I don't want folks to feel like I just have to know everything about my partner in order for this to work. No, I'm not. We're not asking you to be a mind reader. We're just asking you to show up for your partner and be present in that moment and be willing to maneuver when it is time. That is it. Lastly, we want to understand that your partner's love language may not change. Your love language may not change, and that is okay. And that means that you are learning a new way of showing up for an individual that may not be innate for you, and that is okay. Yeah. But we are not looking or seeking to change our partner for our own benefit. That is not what we're doing. We are looking and seeing how we can be a light and some sort of help and support for our partner. And if that has to do with how we show up for them, then we're doing that. And the expectation is that we're also receiving that. So I'm going to just stop there. I know that was a lot, but I hope that was clear and helpful.
No, Dr. Anderson or Dr. Love, I'm sorry. That was great. Dr. Anderson, I'm gonna go ahead and transition to the back end of the show. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you got a lot out of it. As always, I'm always learning throughout this show, and so these are real conversations, and I really hope that you guys are getting some valuable tips that may help you in your everyday lives. If you're interested in taking the quiz, we've talked about these love languages. Maybe you've taken the quiz before, but it's been a minute and you want to see if it's still the same. Or maybe this is some new conversation you want to find out to help better communicate that to the loved ones in your life. What I've done is I've put the link into the chat. It's scrolling at the bottom, but you may not remember that or click it. But if you check inside the comment section, I did drop the link and you can be able to click that and take it and really kind of gain some insight into how you want to be loved and how you can show love to the people in your orbit. So with that, Dr. Anderson, what are some final words? Any final thoughts that you have for us?
Yeah. I always have a final word. In regards to this topic and this love language, I do want to reiterate the importance of you knowing your own love language and also being able to pour that back into yourself. And so I think a big thing that I've learned throughout the years is how to make myself happy. And it's knowing innately what you need in the moment and knowing that it can change and it can shift at any moment, right? Sometimes you need to be outside. Sometimes you need to be inside. Sometimes you need to turn your phone off and you don't want any communication. Sometimes you want to be in the presence of your closest family members, right? But knowing what you need in that moment to make yourself happy and to bring yourself at ease and in kind of the centering space. And so the biggest takeaway for me in regards to love languages is knowing how you would like to be loved and knowing what feels good for you, right? And then being able to communicate that to not just your partner, but the people around you and not feeling guilty for doing it, not feeling guilty for teaching folks how to love you, right? Because that's a part of not only love languages, but creating boundaries in our lives, right? We need to teach folks how to be with us. And so know how to love you and then give it to yourself first, and then be able to show your partners and those around you what it looks like. But again, they're taking notes from you, right? They're taking notes from you and they're looking at you to see how you take care of yourself first. So if that's an expectation of how you take care of yourself first, the folks around you, and like Ray said, in your orbit, are forced to show up in that way. And if they don't, that's okay. You can tell them your boundary and choose how you would like to move forward. Okay. And so with this conversation, thank you all for just joining us and just being open. Again, this is a theory, but being open to the ways in which you deserve love and how you would like to give love to the folks in your life. So next week at 11 a.m., we will be coming back to talk about the effects of social media. So meet us there. You all have a great afternoon and take care.
For more than 40 years, Boston Scientific has relied on our spirit of relentless innovation to advance science for life. We have the privilege and responsibility to deliver higher quality, less invasive, and more accessible device solutions, and the need has never been greater. Boston Scientific technologies are used to treat roughly 30 million patients around the world each year. Across our business, our products are supported by vast clinical data, including bench testing, randomized controlled trials, and ongoing real-world evidence to ensure the highest quality products make it into the hands of our customers. And we're always looking for ways to provide even more effective therapies and solutions. We invest over $1 billion annually in research and development to sustain a robust pipeline of meaningful innovations. We continuously strengthen our manufacturing and operations capabilities with artificial intelligence and advanced microelectronics to create devices that are smaller and smarter. And we're collaborating with our medical partners and physicians to advance digital capabilities with remote device support and a broad scope of training and education programs. Advancing science for life is also about supporting our employees and the communities in which we operate. Now more than ever, we rely on our values to guide our company as a global business and as a global corporate citizen. We're working to help confront healthcare inequities and social injustice, not only with financial contributions, but through volunteer service, advocacy, and expanding market accessibility. We're also focused on environmental initiatives that move us towards our goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. The unmet needs are great, but the future of healthcare is bright. Our innovation centers provide a place to explore opportunities, examine solutions, and see what lies ahead for medicine. Together, we can continue the relentless pursuit of innovation to help everyone live longer, healthier lives and make a difference all over the world.